Actually, when I started to think about singularity, it was the time when I started to work actually with the concept of social utopia. The concept of social utopia was kind of thinking about this, how we can imagine another society, how we can imagine equal society, society beyond patriarchy and beyond racism, colonialism, and capitalism. So it was a bit difficult question and still an unanswered question. So I also discussed a lot this topic last year with my students. And this kind of thinking about utopia, political utopia as a project, as a political project, is actually something which leads us to the past and to the repetition, to some kind of, let's say, emancipatory politics which happened, but also ended up in different kind of unrealized, they were in a way unrealized. So I think first of all here on communists and communism and socialist state and so on, and especially when I speak about social utopia and about politics after the social utopia, I also use the example of Yugoslavia as one great socialist project after the Second World War, which ended up with the genocide. So it's also a question how it's possible to have such kind of things, how it's possible to happen, to have some kind of collective body, of common body, to get into such kind of identitarian diversification and class diversification, and to end up in such mess. Also, from my previous practice as feminist, I also faced with many impossibilities, and in the first place to think about singularity. So, because thinking about feminism, it's always thinking about distinction. And thinking about distinctions and is thinking about different kind of identification, subjectivization, and so on. So when I decided to use this quote, and the singular is primarily each one, and therefore also within among the all others, the singular is a plural, I actually started to think about possibility to go beyond the social utopia and to enter into the sphere where we cannot imagine what we could be. So this is some field of unrepresentable, and for all my previous practices, which comes from different kind of emancipatory politics, is actually how we can start from this empty space, non-space, non-participation, non-state, and to develop ourselves. So I was thinking before that it's very important to start from political subjectivation, but this political subjectivation is also very often connected to different contexts and to the histories and to collective memories and to previous knowledges and kind of events which happened and occurred before. So always we are forced to position ourselves, to situate with some place, and those places are always some kind of violence is already inscribed in it. So I started to think, is it possible to think singularity? And if it's possible to think togetherness instead of community, instead of society, and which kind of togetherness that would be and how we can define it. So this is very abstract, actually, notion, and there is different kind of approaches to singularity, from Sartre to, Agamben, Derrida, and other philosophers, and different kind of thinking about what does it mean. And this distinction between singular and individual is very important here, because thinking about singularity is thinking about something new, something unpredictable, and something unique, something which can be notion around which we can actually act and politically develop ourselves in the same way. So I would like now to give the word to Övül Durmusoglu. She will introduce in the more concrete, let's say, question about how to think togetherness to different practices of women, feminist, LGBT and other movements. And after that we will back through discussion with Karen and with Brett to this question of participation, not participation, and a possibility to politically subjectivize ourselves through different formats of resistance today. Because when we resist today, we resist also from this position of legality and illegality, from this dichotomy, and we start to think about how we will actually perform this kind of resistance. And this kind of resistance is atomized. We have academic resistance, artistic resistance, and so on, different kind, not only through identities, but also through format. And when I invited Vincent to present this project of stateless states, is actually I had that idea of singularity through this project, which actually introduced form and morphology of the space and art, how we can just provide something, some common space to discuss from those positions of excluded and from those non-existing position, and these positions which are outside this capitalist, racist, and so on. So this is also, for me, it's very important, going back to the previous lectures and talks today, I think that all those things are somehow connected. And I think also that we are stuck with this. We discussed a lot, we understand things, but actually how to go further and how to invent new form of ideology that could be singular for all of us is also a question which brings us to some another future that is unpredictable and unexpected.